Good morning. For the sake of time, let's get started. And if others join in, we will just add them to the meeting and move forward. You are attending the Best Practices in HR webinar. This will be presented by myself and Jodi Cordes of the Women's Business Center at CEI. Thank you for joining us today. The SBDC is a no-cost confidential business advising organization. We have been doing this for 45 years. We have 13 business advisors spread out geographically across the state of Maine, and we really focus on that one-on-one confidential advising. So if you've met with an advisor already, fantastic. I hope that's going well for you. If you haven't, please feel free to connect through our website and be assigned to an advisor. My name is Chris Dodge. I have been an SBDC advisor for 3 years. I am located in Augusta. My office is in Augusta, but I cover central Maine, so basically Kennebec and Somerset County. But we've got advisors everywhere, so somebody that can conveniently meet with you either in person or over Zoom. And I'd like to introduce Jodi. Jodi has been a business advisor with the Women's Business Center at CEI for a number of years now, and her background is in HR. She is a certified human resource management person and will do a lot of today's presentation. We are hoping to leave plenty of time at the end for any of your questions, or if you have questions as we're going along, please feel free to pop them in the comments, and when we get a break, we will go over that. So I will turn it over to Jodi and enjoy, and hopefully we can get any of your questions answered before the session ends.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, for having me. And as Chris said, yes, I'm a SHRM certified and had been a HR director for many years prior to coming over to CEI to help with business advising. And one of the things that I think is really important and what I really strive to do is as small business owners, we don't have an HR department, right? It maybe is one of us or two of us or, a team of 10. And so HR is always one of those things that no matter if you have one employee or 100 employees, you still have some of those things that you just generally have to do. And as small business owners, a lot of times, we're just doing what we know what to do, not necessarily the HR side of things. So just to start us off with a quote of the day. So as a reminder that, like I said, if you have one person that works for you or, 15 people, that the people that do work for you are your most important assets. But the more important thing is that they're the right people. And I feel like I've had a lot of these conversations in the past. I think we're turning a little bit out of the maybe not as a hiring crisis anymore because there seems to be more people out there, but it's not always about just hiring the body to do the job. It's about hiring the right person. But as small business owners, we know that sometimes we still need the person to fill that job. And so we're going to just walk through some of those best practices so that you're making sure that you always have the right person working for you. And it's okay if it isn't the right person and how we're going to mitigate that and move ourselves into a better place. So let's start with the foundations of hiring. And I think that sometimes, like I said, we hopefully are not in such of a hiring crisis anymore. I'm hearing rumblings, I'm seeing more applicants applying. That when you're hiring, this is the most important part of the entire process, is hiring that right person. Because the cost of a bad hire is really expensive. So in general, just hiring someone, you potentially have lost somebody. So you have those that extra that somebody else is picking up. It may be overtime. You have the time to actually post the job and what it may actually cost to post a job. And then you have bringing them on in the training, and depending on what job that they're doing, how long that training may last. There, an estimate in the US is that average cost of a new hire is about $24,000 from all of that, from losing an employee to interviewing, that interview time, and so on and so forth. So the cost of a bad hire is pretty expensive. So you want to make sure that you get it right the first time. The other thing is that when you have somebody that comes in that's not so great, not even money wise, is what it might do to your current production or productivity and the morale of your other employees. So not only is there some cost, but it could significantly impact just the product, the service, or the morale of the others that are doing great work for you. So it's super important to do it right the first time. So a couple things that you want to do to make it as simple as possible is you want to clearly define that role. And that would be with a job description. And even though some of you may be very small, and I don't know, a job description is for any job. It could be for that first person. So that job description is actually going through and outlining exactly what it is that they want to do or you need them to do. That is also used for posting the job. So it's not only what you're keeping them in the mix with from the day to day of what they need to do or evaluation time or if they're going to get a promotion, but it starts from posting the job. What is this job going to do? Now, I'm not going to say that you can't have that other line at the bottom that says other duties as assigned, because I highly suggest that in any job description, but you truly want to have the role defined to get you started. You also want to have the must-haves versus the nice-to-have skills when you're looking for someone. What I have seen in the past is unfortunately when people would come to me, because I used to be a recruiter, people would come to me and say they must have a bachelor's degree. And my response was, why? Because you are excluding people that don't. And so my question always will for you to ask yourself is, why do they have to have the must have? And could it be a prefer to have kind of scenario? This goes back into like customer service. Do they have to have customer service? Or it would be nice if they had customer service. So be very careful when you are hiring that you don't put strict guidelines around things, that you're excluding people from maybe being in that interview or even applying for the job because they don't think that they have the qualifications. I have found in a lot of entry level positions that I have hired, I'd rather them not actually have the skills because I want to train them the way I need them to be. And I want them to have the personality, the customer service, those kinds of things instead. And then I'll train them how I want to be able to train them. So just think about that in that scenario. Using structured interview questions is key. And on the next slide, we're going to go through a couple of those. Behavioral interview questions, so that it's not only about like what's on their resume, it's about the type of person they are. Remember back to that quote, I said it is the right person. And a lot of times the right person, you can train them to do what you need to have done, but is everything else mesh with the team that you have, the industry that you're working with? And so that's where those behavioral questions will come into play to sort of find out who this person really is, not just what the skills are that they bring. Reference checks. If you can get somebody to actually pick up a phone for a reference checks, highly encourage it. There is definitely has been over, I would say, the last 10 years, some hesitancies about even somebody giving you a reference because of defamation of character and the lawsuits that have gone away with that. But I still encourage you to try to get those reference checks, if possible, from previous employers. And then, like I said several times on this slide, that culture and values align, making sure that they're the right fit for your job, for you, and for the employees that you already currently have working for you. So I believe Chris is going to send this presentation, so you don't have to write down all of these sample interview questions. But here is just a smattering of some really good questions that I like to use with the behavioral interview questions, getting them to talk. You don't want to provide them interview questions that are a yes, no, or something that they can just spit out. You want to get them to talk about situations, how they would react, things of that nature. And so, as I said, I have several of them here. You can definitely use Google to get more specific, or AI if that is something that you're comfortable with, specific to your, business or the job that you're looking for. But I always start with those kinds of questions. I'm also a really big proponent, and when I do my advising on HR, I always say, I would most likely tell you in today's day and age, try to do a phone interview first, just to make sure they're going to pick up the phone. There are so many people out there that just waste our time, unfortunately, because they apply and then they don't even respond. But when I do those phone interviews, it's all of these kinds of questions. It's getting to know what exactly kind of person am I even kind of bring in and talk to about doing the things that I really need them to do in this position. One of the big ones that I didn't put on here, but that I do like to do, is tell me a time that you had, that you or recently did an act of kindness that you've done. And so just to think of people or watch them think about that question in general, it doesn't provide me anything about the position that I'm applying for, but I just want to see how they respond, or how they take like trying to figure out what an actual act of kindness is. It tells me the kind of person that they are. And so that's one that I a lot of times will use on a phone interview or a Zoom interview to get started. Is just something as simple as that. Doesn't have to be detailed, but it's showing you a little bit about that person. So hopefully you've gone through the whole hiring process, and you have, asked all the questions, and you found the greatest employee that you think is going to come on board. The next thing that I would encourage anybody, from one person working for them to, like I said, 100, is an employee handbook. So that when they come on board for that onboarding process, that they have clear and concise information on what is expected of them. If you think about it yourself, it is really nice to know what you're expected to do. And so not only having that job description helps them know what the job is, but then also having some of those things that maybe they have questions about, but they don't know how to ask them. The other thing about employee handbooks is it really is something that will help you in a legal situation. So if, for example, let's say you had to lay somebody off, or you had to let them go, and you go through unemployment, a lot of times they're going to ask for an employee handbook if you had to let somebody go. They want to see that you had things lined out on the expectations of your employees. If for some reason you need to, uh, be able to do other different things with the staff, by changing that employee handbook, it is clear and concise with every single person. So I always say, even if your handbook starts out as 3 pages, that's a good place to start. And then you just update it as necessary or needed. The thing is that anytime you make a change to your employee handbook, is that you do it and they review it. So I always try to tell people, like, try to do it once a year. It doesn't have to be January, 'cause sometimes January is crazy. You can do it any time of year, but you do want to do it at least yearly and have them review the handbook. This is a great place to add additional things and remind people about what your expectations are. I find that when I've done these yearly reviews in the past, that I am able to remind people about what it is like, or what it is, or what it should not be like when it comes to dress code or the tardy policy or calling out. Those are the common things that we sometimes see that people need to be reminded on the expectations. Now, the other thing is when you hand them an employee handbook, it does not mean that they have to, like, you have to give it a new employee handbook to everyone. You just have to have it available for them to be able to get to. But you do need to have them sign off that they have actually seen the edits or revisions. And there's a big thing that I just want to make sure is that um, you have them sign off that they have reviewed it, and you put that in their personnel file, but they do not have to accept it. They're just actually saying that they received it. I have had situations where people say, I don't agree with the new PTO policy, so I am not signing this employee handbook review. And I'm like, well, it's not that you agree with it. It's just that you have received it and you know where to go if you need information. So that's just something I want to remind you. If they truly choose to not sign it, I would still put that piece of paper in their personnel file saying refuse to sign, the date, and you put in there for whatever reason. But I bring that up because I've had a lot of questions about when somebody doesn't want to sign an employee handbook, and it's not accepting something, it's just acknowledging of that. So if you don't have an employee handbook, here is a really good spot for your things for you to start. So those company policies, and remember, these are not standard operating policies. So this is not where you go step by step, like how do you like clock in, and what's the website and all that kind of stuff. This is just a policy. It's not a standard operating procedure. Code of conduct. So what do you expect of your employees? What is the dress code? Do you have an internet or email etiquette that you want them to, understand? How the use of resources of the company. I put this in there because sometimes as small business owners, I have found that we're just so willing to allow for individuals to borrow or take and return, and then that doesn't actually happen, or something gets ruined. And what are those expectations? Because as a small business owner, a lot of times they become more like family, but you still have to have these processes in place. Attendance policy, those timekeeping procedures, okay? Performance evaluations and when they're going to be done and what that might mean. If you are to discipline them, what is the actual disciplinary timelines and different stages? Employee benefits, if you have some, or if you aren't having some, that might be applicable to put in there as well. And then the compensation payroll information. Now, this does not have to say the actual pay that you're giving people, but just maybe if they were to get cost of living increases, or when and how are promotions created. That's the kind of stuff. You wouldn't put the actual pay in the handbook. So moving over to performance reviews. So performance reviews is an opportunity for you and the employee to sit down every year or every 6 months. Those are two of the standard times, and really start talking about how they are doing as an employee for you. So the thing that you should know is that if you have 10 employees, the average is that 20% of your employees, or excuse me, that you should have, I misspoke. So that's improvement. So For the performance reviews, you should pick a time when you're doing it. So there's two different times that you can do it. You can do it on their anniversary to spread the people out. So that means you're doing performance reviews throughout the year. So if Susie Q started in June, she would have her performance review every June. Or you can pick one time during that, and then that's when everybody has their performance review. So either way works. The key is, and you can see a small little sample, it does not have to be complex. I think in big companies, and I've worked in large companies before, they're pages and pages long. You can have something as simple as what you see here on my screen, where you just sort of like go through a couple different things that you want to just reiterate, and a time to sit down and chat about their, how they're doing on the job. The SMART goals is a way for you to be able to come up with ways to improve your employees or for them to improve themselves. And so this is SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So when creating in the performance review, there should always be a goals section. What is the goal for this employee to go into the next year? And that goal should be in this smarty goal kind of scenario so that it can be measured. It is achievable so that they don't feel like they have a goal that will never possibly happen. And so I give you some examples here, right? Like thinking about if you had somebody that was working on wholesaling and you wanted them to grow by 300% for next month. That might not be obtainable. But if you say that you're looking for growth revenue by 10% over the next quarter, it's something that they can actually achieve in doing so. So just remembering that and how to do that and making sure that at least I would say each employee should have one or two goals that they're working towards to improve over time. Right? It gives them something to look forward to and trying to improve, as well as you having an employee that's trying to improve your business as well. Now, when things don't happen the way that they're supposed to happen, right? That is when, unfortunately, we go into that corrective behaviors. And this is where I was going a minute ago and had to stop myself. That corrective behaviors is about 20% of your staff. So if you have those 10 employees, 20% of them should probably be in a corrective behavior area. So, and that could be just the fact that you've talked to them and said, hey, I've been noticing that you've been 5 minutes late for the last 3 weeks. This is something that needs to sort of change. So it does not mean that it has to be something, super punitive. It does not have to be something that's written, but about 20% of the people that you have working for you have some kind of correction that needs to be made based on their job description, their performance reviews, and things of that nature. So the biggest thing I would say when we talk about correcting behaviors is it is most of the time the small stuff. And I remember that book when I was younger, and I'm probably dating myself, but Don't Sweat the Small Stuff was a big deal, right? Because when you don't sweat the small stuff, it gets bigger and it becomes more of a problem. So you cannot continue to ignore those small problems because I promise you they're going to get worse or other people notice. So if you have more than one employee and one's getting away with coming 5 minutes late, it is noticed. So do not ignore them. Also, poor handling of issues that you have could get you into some legal risks on not, either taking care of them or how you're taking care of them. So I want you to be cautious. And then once again, going back to those morale issues, people do notice that, Susie Q comes late every day and nothing is being said. And that gets the negativity going within the workplace. Professionalism protects the business and your relationships. So how you actually handle corrective action or having them just be acknowledging the fact that they are seeing something or you're seeing something that's going wrong and correcting it, I promise will help you in the future. And then a clear process makes those hard conversations easier. Now, as an HR director, unfortunately, I've had to let a lot of people go over my career, and it is not easy for any person to let somebody go. But what I can tell you is most of the time, unless it was severe, did somebody know that they were probably going to get let go? Because we had had the conversation many times before. They shouldn't be coming into your office not knowing because you've had these problems and you continue to address them and go through the steps that are necessary. And they know that they're almost on the last, the last string when they come to your office and you say, okay, Susie Q, we've been talking about your lateness. It hasn't, it has not, gotten better. We've done all of these things. You have one last chance, like, this is it. So, or, I'm giving you one last chance. You're on your third, reminder, and this is it. So when they come in, it's not a surprise because they know that they were late. So some of those common issues that a lot of times we ignore because we think, oh, we got other things to do or it'll just correct itself are those lateness or attendance problems, calling out all the time, poor performance or low productivity, right? Not, picking up their weight, behavioral problems, being disrespectful or rude, policy violations. A lot of times, dress code is a big one. Like I forgot my closed-toe shoes and I work in a factory. Well, that's, it's against policy to do that. Misuse of equipment, time, or property. And there's some pretty sophisticated time clock systems out there. So, but doesn't mean that that's not still a potential issue. So when you have a performance improvement or something that needs to be changed, or you notice an issue, there's a couple things I just want you to know. So consistency is vital because the consistency that happens, others, like I said, the morale within your business is going to change if you are not consistent across the spectrum, as well as if for some reason it goes into a legal situation, you want to show consistency because they will ask for documentation. So a standard progressive discipline starts with a verbal warning. Hey, Susie Q, I noticed you were late this morning. Just want to make sure that we start at 8, not 8:05. It's as simple as that. Okay. Now, I would tell you it sounds crazy because it's a verbal, but I would then go and write it down. I had a verbal conversation with Susie Q today on 3/19 that she was late because you're going to need that information for the second one. So the first written warning, and I have an example here of what a really short performance improvement plan might look like, or what should be included in it, is where you actually say, on 3/19, I talked to you about being late. This is now our second time that we are, now on 3/27. You were late again. And so now I'm writing you up to say, okay, this has happened now twice, or maybe 3 times, whatever the case may be, going back to that employee handbook on what your policies are, that you write them up and they would sign that. They would sign that document, and then you actually create a time where you're going to review it and say, Susie Q, you have been doing great. Good job. We're going to take you off of that performance improvement plan. You've gone a month without being late. Or you go to the second warning because now Susie Q on April 3rd is late again. And so that is where you would then go to the second written warning. If they do not improve their performance is how they go through this, progressive discipline. But the point is, I think, is not to make it punishment, to just remind or to find out, okay, Susie Q, what is going on that you continue to be 5 minutes late? And I had this problem, I will say, as an HR manager. And it turns out that the bus came at 7:45 to this employee's house. They put their kids on the bus and then they raced to work. Well, the last thing I want them doing is racing to work. Okay. So I said, okay. So obviously the bus at 7:45, you getting to work in 15 minutes is a little scary, right? Like you should have a little more leeway. So would it work? And it did work for us in this situation to start you at 8:15 or 8:30. However, you are now going to be my late person because you're coming in a half hour later than everybody else. So now can you stay till 5:30? And so sometimes it's a conversation. It's about creating that connection with people. It's not about punishing because they were 5 minutes late. It's about figuring out what is the problem. Why can't figure out what the policy is and then stick to it? And um, and so in that scenario, we were able to work with it and be able to solve the problem. Now I didn't have to worry about somebody getting a speeding ticket or being in an unsafe situation. And she felt so much better that now she could get her kids on the bus and actually go in and get her coffee and breathe, right? Overall, it solved itself because I had the conversation, but it started with a performance improvement plan, to be quite honest. Started with the verbal warning, and she was like, "Oh, I'll just have to, drive faster." And I'm thinking, but it wasn't until the written that I said, "What is the issue? Why can't we get here? Is there something I should know?" And that's when it came up. The other thing is documentation is key. And I said that with that verbal warning. You want to make sure you're always documenting. The other thing is using facts because facts cannot be an emotional thing. It is what it is. And so factual information on 319, I had a conversation with you about being 5 minutes late, so on and so forth. Don't say, I think you were late. I thought I saw, it's not about an emotion. When you're doing a performance improvement plan, it is all about the facts. So, how do we keep these really great people? Even Susie Q, who was 5 minutes late, and we figured it out. She was a great employee, right? So, how do we figure this out so that we can be better employers and keep the people that we have very, very happy? So that they continually want to give back to our business. So I encourage you to look at what are your growth opportunities within your business. Now, as small businesses, I'm not saying that they're going to be president next year. I'm talking about what kinds of trainings do they want to do? Is there a training out there that they want to be a part of? Is there a coaching situation? So maybe you hire somebody and they are actually the coach to coach that new person coming on board? Are there different workshops? Building new skills is only going to help you as a small business owner. And it also makes them feel like there's growth and opportunities within your business. There is a grant right now, and we can provide you that information, but it's through the Harold Alfond Workforce Development Grant here in the state of Maine. It is free to sign up, and basically what it is that it allows for 50% of whatever the workshop or seminar can be paid by the grant to expand entry-level people within their own current working environment. So if that is something that you're interested in, I can make sure that I get that to Chris. It is an excellent opportunity for you to be able to provide those growth opportunities and only have to pay 50% of the cost potentially if they qualify. The other thing is recognition. People want to hear the words thank you. It doesn't cost anything, but they want to hear it. They want you to know that they are going above and beyond or appreciated. Public acknowledgement. So if you have banquets or you have holiday parties or outings, they want to have that public acknowledgement that they're doing a great job, or that, they've expanded something or whatever. People enjoy being appreciated. And when they feel appreciated, they most likely are going to stay. The other thing is rewards and incentives. I am a big proponent that $5 gift cards can take you a long way, and people are so ecstatic when they get a $5 gift card. I used to go to Giffords. I'm not sure they loved me, but I would go, can I get I was at a big facility, but I was like, can I get 100 $5 gift cards? And they're like, what? Finally, I went to the main office instead of just a small stand, but just giving those out for seeing great things, it is like you gave them the world. And as a small business owner, you can't always give them the world, right? Because you're just trying to do what you need to do to keep it going. So think about small things or letting them go an hour early on a holiday weekend, things like that. They appreciate that. And then they feel valued. Also, promoting respect and collaboration, encouraging open communication, and practicing transparent leadership is really a big deal. They want to know that they can talk to you when they have something. And I am a true proponent of when I have a question, I would always go to my front line and say, how do we solve this? Because I don't know. I'm a supervisor and I have no idea. You're the ones that are working here. This is what I think. Do you think this is going to work? So having that open communication, that door that they can come in and ask a question, and just being open and honest of what's going on will truly go beyond your expectations on keeping the people that you have happy being there. And the last thing is if you haven't heard of it before, it's called a stay interview. And it can happen. I wouldn't put it with your performance evaluation, but I would put it as another time as a checkpoint to just ask them, how can you fix them anything that might be going on? And so what keeps them there? And what can you do better for them? What are those things? Just random open-ended questions so that they feel valued and that they feel heard. A lot of times they just want to tell you, you know what? Machine 3, it stinks when we clean it because this valve gets stuck all the time. Well, guess what? You probably don't know that. But these are the times that you find out, oh, well, a valve costs probably $10. Are you telling me that that is going to make your life easier? Well, heck, I'm going to spend $10 to make a valve um, get fixed to make their lives a little easier. But you won't find that information. That's not something that they're going to walk in and tell you. So those stay interviews provide that little feedback, and it could be the shoot the moon, right? That they want, annual bonuses. And of course, we just say thank you for telling us, right? We can't always do everything that they may provide to you in a state interview, but it opens that communication and makes sure that the people that are working for you that you truly value continue to stay with you. And so that's one thing that I really encourage anybody who has an employee to do, because they're the ones that are working it every day, and they're the ones that are going to tell you probably how to make your business even better. I went through a lot of information in 35 minutes. I know. So, but those I felt like were the HR basics that I just want small business owners to really think about as you may be growing or not have some of these things in place of what could really help you when it comes to the people. And if you remember that quote, right? It's the right people that we want working for us. And so, with that being said, I think we're going to open it up to questions and answer session for anybody that might want a little more information based on what I said, or if it's something outside of that, I am definitely here to try to help.
Jodi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, Small business owners are largely responsible for the culture that they're creating. So, um, it's kind of not, do as I say, but do as I do kind of thing. And what resources, I've talked to business owners who say, I'm not the best at relating with my employees because I'm dealing with these big executive decisions, and so sometimes I'm a little, not focused, or I'm not maybe as present as I should be. Are there resources? Is there, a good book or a class out there that entrepreneurs could access to maybe help them strengthen their skills at managing people and creating a positive culture?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of books out there. I can't think of like the one, but I would encourage you to read a lot of different books. I don't know if there's actually a class, Chris, but I think that sometimes this HR stuff is a little hard because you went into business for what you enjoyed, whether that was carpentry or food service or whatever the case may be. You didn't go into business because you loved managing people or you knew how to manage people. So that is the difficult part of things. Is that you have to try to figure out, well, what is the best way for me to be able to do that? Because I'm still trying to run this business or expand this business. One of the things that I think is really important that I have seen done is just having a day or a time every month or whatever you can handle so that you can just have that open conversation. I've seen small business owners that they have like breakfast with their staff or they have like lunch, every once in a while. So it just creates the conversation that wouldn't necessarily happen because everybody comes in at 8 o'clock and they're just off and going. But the reality is you need that conversation to be a good leader, right? And you are leading by example by just having the ability to go into the facility and see how things are going and just saying hi. We instituted at the one of the larger organizations I worked in, it was called rounding. And so rounding was really just going around and saying hi to your employees. Literally, that was what it was, is saying hello. And it was interesting by just saying good morning or hi, what that may have sparked because they knew that you were coming around to say hi, but then that's the time where they would say, "Hey, Miss, so and so," or Jodi, let me ask you this one thing, because you were in their space instead of them coming to your space. And I did that at that previous facility. I would always come through the bottom entrance. Most leadership would come at through the top where our offices were. I came through the service entrance because I would always see people and I wanted to hear what they had to say. And they'd be like, "Why are you coming through the service entrance? Like, why don't you, your office is on the third floor." I say, "Because I want to see what's going on. I want to talk to you." And I would encourage more than probably any book is just say hi and you will probably change the effect of how they feel by just being present in their space.
That was great. That's really good advice. And Jodi, thank you so much for joining us today. I think there was a lot of great information in this presentation. Um, for those of you attending, here are some links to connect with the SBDC. You will receive by email today's slide deck with the presentation. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. And if there's nothing else, then we will let you go. Thank you for being here today. There will be more webinars coming up very soon, so keep an eye on our website and have a wonderful day. Thanks for being here.